Hey guys, tonight we're going to slow things down and sit with the story that matters. Marcus Tate, a 52-year-old black man, carries himself with a quiet that runs deeper than words, a stillness forged through years of seeing the world's sharp edges. As an FBI internal affairs chief, he's used to navigating shadows, but nothing prepares him for the night. A small Alabama town turns its prejudice on him. Mistaken for just another face in the crowd, Marcus faces a battle that tests his dignity. Before we begin, please like the video and subscribe, but only if stories like this truly move you. Comment your city and the time you're watching. Now close your eyes or don't, it's your choice. Either way, you're about to witness something real. The highway stretches like a ribbon of ink under the Alabama night stars pricking the sky above Elmore County. Marcus Tate grips the wheel of his rented sedan, a plain gray Corolla, that blends into the world's edges. His suit jacket creased from a long day hangs over the passenger seat. At 52, his face carries lines of resolve, etched by decades of silent observation. He's on his way to a motel in Wetumpka, a small town where the Causa River murmurs secrets to anyone who listens. His work investigating misconduct in police departments across the Southeast keeps him moving invisible, a ghost in plain sight. Tonight, he's just a man driving the radio, humming low with gospel, a faint comfort against the weight of his latest case file. Red and blue lights pulse in his rearview mirror, sharp as a blade. Marcus's breath catches, not from fear, but from recognition. He knows this script. He eases the car to the shoulder gravel, crunching under tires. The patrol car's headlights bathe him in a harsh glow, and two officers step out, their silhouettes broad and unyielding. Officer Travis Boone, mid-30s with a buzz, cut in a jaw set like concrete wraps on the driver's window. His partner, Officer Dale Carver, leans against the passenger side flashlight beam, dancing across Marcus's face. License and registration. Boone snaps voice-clipped eyes, narrowing. Marcus's hands move deliberately, retrieving his ID from the glove box. Reason for the stop, he asks, voice low, steady as stone. You didn't signal your lane change, Boone says, though Marcus knows he did. The lie hangs heavy, a spark in the humid air. He hands over his license, Marcus Tate, Montgomery, Alabama. No mention of the FBI. Not yet. Where you headed, Carver chimes in, his tone mocking, like he's already decided the answer doesn't matter. Can't say, Marcus replies, eyes fixed on the dashboard. Federal protocol. Boone's face hardens. Can't or won't, he presses, leaning closer, his breath fogging the half-open window. Marcus meets his gaze, unflinching. Protocol. The word lands like a stone in still water, ripples of tension spreading. Boone's smirk fades. Step out of the car, he orders, hand twitching toward his holster. Marcus doesn't move, not out of defiance but precision. I've complied, he says, voice a quiet blade. Is this a lawful stop? Carver laughs, a harsh bark that cuts the night. You think you're smart, huh? Get out now. Marcus's jaw tightens, a flicker of heat in his chest, but his face remains a mask. He knows what's coming. He's seen it in reports, heard it in testimonies. Black men pulled over, questioned, pushed because their existence feels like a challenge. The officers don't wait. Boone yanks the door open and Carver circles to the driver's side. Move, Boone shouts, grabbing Marcus's arm. The grip is too tight, meant to provoke. Marcus steps out, hands visible, heart steady. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. They don't ask questions now. Boone shoves Marcus against the car, the metal cold against his palms. Carver's flashlight blinds him, a deliberate jab. You got something to hide, Carver taunts, patting him down with unnecessary force. Marcus's silence is his shield, but it fuels their anger. What's with the attitude, Boone snaps, twisting Marcus's arm. Pain shoots through his shoulder, but Marcus doesn't flinch. His mind is elsewhere, cataloging every word, every action. The recorder in his coat pocket hums a silent witness. They cuff him, the steel biting his wrists, and shove him into the patrol car. You're gonna learn respect, Carver mutters, slamming the door. The patrol car smells of stale coffee and arrogance, a fitting cage for their assumptions. The Wetumpka police station is a squat brick building, its fluorescent lights buzzing like trapped flies. Marcus sits in a holding cell, the bench hard against his back. The officers' voices echo down the hall, smug, certain they've won. Guy thinks he's above the law, Boone says loud enough for Marcus to hear. Won't talk, won't explain. Typical. Carver chuckles. He'll crack in court. Marcus's eyes trace the cell's cracked ceiling, his breathing slow, deliberate. He's not angry, not yet. Anger clouds judgment, and Marcus is a man of clarity. He thinks of his father, a janitor who taught him to stand tall without shouting, to let actions speak. The memory steadies him, a quiet anchor in the storm. Outside, the town sleeps, oblivious. Wetumpka's main street, lined with mom-and-pop shops and faded American flags, feels a world away from the cell's gray walls. But Marcus knows this town knows its history. Red-lined neighborhoods, whispered slurs, complaints buried under unfounded stamps. He's here because of those complaints, because body cams keep malfunctioning during stops like his. The officers don't know that. They see a black man alone, unremarkable. They don't see the badge in his pocket, the authority he carries, the storm he can summon. They don't see Marcus Tate. The cell door clangs, and Boone appears smirking. "You got one call," he says, tossing a phone through the bars. Marcus catches it, his movements precise. He doesn't dial. Instead, he hands it back, eyes locked on Boone's. "I'll wait for court," he says, voice calm but heavy like a judge's gavel. Boone's smirk falters just for a second. He doesn't understand why Marcus isn't begging, isn't explaining. That uncertainty is Marcus's first victory, small but sharp. The officer turns away, muttering under his breath, and Marcus leans back, closing his eyes. The recorder still runs, capturing the silence that will soon break everything open. In the station's break room, Boone and Carver sip burnt coffee, their laughter brittle now. "He's nobody," Carver says, but his voice wavers. Boone nods too quick. "Yeah, just another guy mouthing off." They don't mention the license, clean and unremarkable, or the way Marcus's calm unnerves them. They don't mention the body cam Boone switched off, claiming a glitch. Across town, the motel room Marcus never reached waits empty, his briefcase untouched, filled with reports that could unravel this department. The night deepens, and Marcus sits in the cell, his shadow long against the wall, heavy with unspoken resolve. The Wetumpka police station hums with the restless energy of a place that never truly sleeps. Marcus Tate sits in the holding cell, his back straight against the cold bench, eyes tracing the faint cracks in the concrete wall. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead, casting a sterile glow that sharpens the edges of his worn suit. His wrists, still raw from the cuffs, rest lightly on his knees. At 52, Marcus carries a stillness that feels like a gathering storm, a quiet forged in years of facing rooms like this, not as a prisoner, but as the man who asks questions no one wants to answer. The recorder in his coat pocket hums on a silent ally, capturing every sound, the drip of a leaky faucet, the distant clatter of a keyboard, the low laughter of officers Travis Boone and Dale Carver down the hall. Boone's voice cuts through the air, sharp and mocking. "Guy's still sitting there like he owns the place," he says loud enough to carry. Carver snorts, leaning against a vending machine in the break room. "What's he gonna do?" Stare us into submission. Their laughter is brittle, a mask for the unease. Marcus's silence stirs. They don't know he's an FBI internal affairs chief, that his presence in Wetumpka is no accident. They see only a black man alone, unremarkable, his calm an insult to their authority. Marcus's jaw tightens, a flicker of heat in his chest, but his face remains unreadable. He thinks of his father's words spoken over a kitchen table in Montgomery. "They'll try to break you, son. Don't give them the satisfaction." The memory is a tether keeping him steady. The cell smells of bleach and old coffee, a faint tang of despair clinging to the walls. Marcus shifts slightly, his suit creasing further the fabric, a quiet rebellion against the indignity of this place. He's been here for hours. No phone call granted beyond Boone's taunting offer. No explanation for the failure to comply. Charge they've pinned on him. The stop was unlawful. Marcus knows it, and the recorder knows it too. He replays the moment on the highway, Boone's hand on his arm, Carver's flashlight in his eyes, the deliberate roughness meant to provoke. He didn't resist, didn't raise his voice, but that only made them angrier. In their world, silence from a man like him is defiance. Footsteps echo, and Carver appears at the cell door, his smirk a thin veneer over uncertainty. "You comfy in there, Tate?" he asks, twirling a keyring like a trophy. Marcus meets his gaze, eyes steady, unflinching. "Comfort's not the issue," he says. Voice low, each word deliberate. "Procedure is." Carver's smirk falters, his fingers pausing on the keys. He leans closer, voice dropping to a hiss. "Keep talking like that, and you'll be here all week." Marcus doesn't blink. "I'll be in court tomorrow," he says, calm as a judge's gavel. "Will ya?" The question hangs sharp and heavy, and Carver steps back, muttering something under his breath before stalking away. Marcus's lips press into a thin line, not a smile, but an acknowledgement of the crack he's opened in their confidence. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. In the break room, Boone slumps in a plastic chair, his coffee gone cold. He's too calm, he says, eyes darting to Carver. "You see that?" Not a word about where he was going, nothing. Carver shrugs, but his fingers drum the table, betraying his unease. Probably some wannabe lawyer thinks he's slick. They don't mention the body cam. Boone switched off, or the report they filed claiming Marcus was verbally aggressive. They don't mention the way his license, clean, unremarkable, felt like a challenge. Across town, Wetumpka's main street lies quiet, its shops shuttered, the Coosa River glinting under moonlight. But the station is a world apart, a microcosm of power and prejudice, where Marcus's presence is a spark in dry grass. A janitor, an older black woman named Clara, pushes a mop past the cell. She glances at Marcus, her eyes sharp with understanding. She's seen men like him before, too many over her 20 years here. "You holding up?" she whispers, her voice barely audible. Marcus nods a small gesture, but his eyes soften. "Always," he says, and Clara offers a faint smile before moving on. Her kindness is a brief warmth, a reminder of the community beyond these walls, where people like Marcus are more than a charge sheet. He thinks of the complaints he's reviewing, dozens buried in the department's files, stories of stops without cause, of body cams that failed at convenient moments. This isn't just about him. It never was. The station's clock ticks toward midnight, each second a wait. Marcus's mind drifts to his daughter Lena, or 24, a law student in Atlanta. She'd be furious if she knew he was here, her voice sharp with worry. "Dad, why didn't you tell them who you are?" He hasn't called her, not because he can't, but because he won't. This is his work, his burden. He carries it alone, as he always has. The recorder captures a new sound now. Boone and Carver back in the hall, their voices lower, less certain. "What if he's got a lawyer?" Carver says. Boone scoffs, but it's forced. He's got nothing. Nobody. Marcus's eyes close, not in surrender, but in focus. They're wrong, and they'll learn how wrong soon enough. Clara passes again her mop, leaving a faint sheen on the floor. She doesn't look at Marcus this time, but she hums softly an old hymn, its melody a thread of resilience. Marcus knows the song his mother sang it back when Montgomery's streets were battlegrounds for civil rights. The sound grounds him, a reminder of why he does this, why he endures. The officer's laughter has faded, replaced by the shuffle of papers, the click of a computer. They're checking his license now. He's sure searching for a crack in his story. They won't find one. His record is clean, his life a careful architecture of discipline. But they don't need evidence to justify what they've done. They've already decided who he is. The cell door rattles, and Boone returns, his face a mix of bravado and doubt. "You got a lot of nerve sitting there like you're untouchable," he says, gripping the bars. Marcus opens his eyes, slow, deliberate. "I'm not untouchable," he says, voice steady. "I'm accountable." "Are you?" Boone's face reddens, but he doesn't answer. He turns away, footsteps heavy, leaving Marcus in the cell's stark light. The recorder hums a silent promise. Outside, the town dreams on, unaware of the fault lines shifting beneath it. Marcus leans back, his shadow long against the wall, heavy with unspoken resolve. The night is long, but morning is coming, and with it a reckoning. The Wetumpka courthouse, a low brick building with ivy creeping up its walls, hums with the muted chaos of a Monday morning. Marcus Tate steps into the courtroom, his worn suit a quiet contrast to the polished wood and brass around him. At 52, his presence is unassuming, but his eyes, sharp, unwavering, carry the weight of a man who's seen too many rooms like this. The air smells of old paper and wax polish, thick with anticipation. Spectators fill the benches, locals whispering about the out-of-towner charged with failure to comply. Officers Travis Boone and Dale Carver stand near the back, arms crossed, their smirks barely concealed. They think they've won that. Marcus is just another name on a docket. They're wrong. The judge, Harold Vance, a white man in his late 60s with a thinning comb-over and a voice like gravel, peers over his glasses. "Marcus Tate," he says, flipping through a file with a dismissive flick. "Charged with failure to comply during a lawful stop. No counsel present." Marcus stands, hands clasped, his voice steady. "I don't need one, Your Honor. A ripple of chuckles spreads Boone's loudest, a harsh bark from the back. Marcus's jaw tightens, but his face remains a mask, his calm, a blade honed over years. He knows this moment, knows the assumptions that cling to him like dust. A black man alone silent must be guilty of something. Vance leans back, his chair creaking. This seems straightforward, he says, barely glancing at Marcus. Anything to say before we proceed? The question is perfunctory, the judge's eyes already drifting to the next case. Boone whispers to Carver loud enough to carry, "Guys got nothing to say, huh?" The gallery stirs, a few heads turning, but Marcus doesn't flinch. His heart beats steady, a metronome of resolve. He thinks of his daughter Lena, her voice echoing from a late night call, "Dad, you carry too much alone." He's carrying it now, not for himself, but for every name buried in Wetumpka's complaint files, every story dismissed as unfounded. The recorder in Marcus's pocket hums a silent witness to the room's casual cruelty. He steps forward, his shoes soft against the hardwood floor. "I'd like to address the charge," he says, voice low but clear, cutting through the murmurs. Vance raises an eyebrow, mildly annoyed. "Go on, then," Boone snorts, leaning toward Carver. "This ought to be good," he mutters, his voice dripping with contempt. Marcus's fingers brush the edge of his coat pocket, where the FBI badge waits, a truth they can't imagine. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. The prosecutor, a young white woman named Emily Holt, shuffles her notes, her expression bored. "Your Honor, Mr. Tate refused to cooperate during a routine stop," she says, her tone clipped. "He was evasive, non-compliant, and escalated the situation." Marcus's eyes flicker to her, then back to the judge. The lie is smooth, practiced, but he hears the cracks in it. He knows the report hastily written, claiming he was verbally aggressive with no mention of Boone's roughness or Carver's taunts. He knows the body cam footage is missing, another convenient glitch in a department with too many. "Is that accurate, Mr. Tate?" Vance asks, his voice heavy with impatience. Marcus takes a breath, slow, deliberate. "No, Your Honor," he says. "I provided my license, answered lawful questions, and followed protocol. The stop was unlawful, and the officers used excessive force." The room stills the weight of his words, settling like dust. Boone's smirk fades, his arms uncrossing. Carver shifts his eyes, darting to the exit. Holt frowns, flipping through her notes, caught off guard. Vance leans forward, his glasses glinting. "That's a serious claim," he says, but his tone suggests he's already dismissed it. "Any evidence to support that?" Marcus's hand twitches, the badge in his pocket, a silent promise. "Not yet," he thinks. "Timing is everything. I'd like the officer's badge numbers entered into the record," he says, his voice calm but unyielding. Boone steps forward, his face reddening. "You don't get to make demands here," he snaps loud enough to draw a gasp from the gallery. Vance raises a hand, silencing him. "Enough," the judge says, but his eyes stay on Marcus, a flicker of curiosity breaking through his indifference. The room feels tighter now, the air charged with unspoken questions. Who is this man so calm in the face of dismissal? A clerk, an older black woman named Ruth, watches from the side, her pen paused over a notepad. She's seen countless cases, heard countless stories, but something about Marcus holds her attention. His silence isn't weakness. It's power coiled in waiting. She thinks of her brother, stopped years ago for looking suspicious, his complaint buried like so many others. Ruth's fingers tighten on her pen, a quiet prayer for justice. Marcus feels her gaze, a fleeting connection in the room's cold machinery. He stands taller, his shadow long against the courtroom floor, heavy with unspoken resolve. Boone and Carver exchange a glance, their confidence fraying. "He's bluffing," Carver whispers, but his voice lacks conviction. They don't know about the recorder or the case files. Marcus has spent months building dozens of complaints, patterns of abuse, body cams that fail only when the stop driver isn't white. They don't know he's here because Wetumpka's department is under his microscope. They see only a man, they can mock a name, they can laugh at. But Marcus sees the misses, the cracks in their story, the lies they've told themselves to sleep at night. The gallery murmurs a low hum of curiosity and doubt. A young man in the back, barely 20, leans forward, his eyes fixed on Marcus. He's been stopped, two questioned for walking home from work, his story dismissed. He doesn't know Marcus, but he knows the feeling of being invisible, of being less than. Marcus is calm, his refusal to bend feels like a mirror, reflecting a strength the young man wants to claim. The room's energy shifts, a tide turning, but Vance doesn't notice. He taps his gavel lightly, ready to move on. "If there's no further evidence," he says, "I'm not finished," Marcus says, his voice cutting through like a blade. The judge pauses, startled. The gallery hushes. Boone's face pales, a bead of sweat tracing his temple. Marcus's hand rests near his pocket, the badge a heartbeat away. He doesn't move, doesn't rush. He's waited all night for this, endured the cell, the taunts, the lies. He'll wait a moment longer, let the room feel the weight of what's coming. The recorder hums, capturing the silence that will soon shatter. The Wetumpka courtroom holds its breath, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths. Marcus Tate stands at the center, his worn suit a quiet defiance against the polished wood and brass around him. At 52, his face is a map of resilience, lines etched by years of carrying burdens no one else sees. The gallery, packed with locals, hums with curiosity, their whispers fading as Marcus's voice low steady cuts through the tension. Judge Harold Vance, his comb-over glinting under the fluorescent lights, leans forward, irritation flickering in his eyes. "You're testing my patience, Mr. Tate," he says, his gravelly voice sharp. "If you've got something to say, say it." Officers Travis Boone and Dale Carver, stationed near the back exchange, smirks, but their hands fidget, betraying unease. They think Marcus is cornered, just another man to be dismissed. They're about to learn how wrong they are. Marcus's hand moves to his coat pocket, deliberate, unhurried. The room watches time slowing as his fingers close around the slim, laminated badge. Boone's smirk falters, his eyes narrowing. Carver shifts his boots, scuffing the floor. Marcus steps closer to the judge's bench, his shadow long against the hardwood, heavy with unspoken resolve. "Your Honor," he says, voice calm but resonant, "I'd like to submit evidence." Vance raises an eyebrow, skeptical. "Evidence," he repeats, glancing at the prosecutor, Emily Holt, who shrugs her notes in disarray. Marcus's heart beats steady, a metronome of purpose. He thinks of his father's words, spoken decades ago, in a Montgomery kitchen, "Stand tall, son, even when they laugh." They're not laughing now. He pulls the badge from his pocket, its FBI seal catching the light, and places it gently on the bench. The room freezes. "I'm Marcus Tate," he says, each word a stone dropped in still water. "Director of Internal Affairs, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Southeastern Division." The badge gleams, a silent thunderclap. Vance's mouth opens, then closes, his glasses slipping down his nose. Boone's face drains of color, his arms falling limp. Carver stumbles back, his shoulder hitting the wall with a dull thud. The gallery gasps, a collective intake of breath that ripples through the benches. Ruth, the clerk, grips her pen, her eyes wide with something like pride. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. Holt scrambles to her feet, her voice trembling. "Your Honor, this wasn't in the report." Vance ignores her, his eyes locked on the badge. "You're with the FBI?" he asks, voice cracking. Marcus nods, unflinching. 28 years. I oversee misconduct investigations, including departments with patterns of unlawful stops and missing body cam footage. The words land like a gavel, each one heavy with implication. Boone's hands clench, his knuckles white. "We didn't know," he mutters, barely audible, but Marcus hears. He turns, his gaze piercing. "You didn't ask," he says, not loud, but the room feels it, a blade of truth cutting through years of lies. The young man in the gallery, the one stop for walking home, leans forward, his eyes shining. He sees Marcus now, not just a man, but a mirror of what justice could be. Ruth scribbles furiously, her pen scratching the silence. Vance clears his throat, his authority shrinking. "Mr. Tate," he says, fumbling, "this changes things. Would you, step to my chambers?" Marcus shakes his head, his voice firm. "I prefer the record." "Your Honor." Full transparency. The refusal is a spark, igniting the room's tension into something electric. Boone's face twists, a mix of fear and defiance. "This is a setup," he shouts, stepping forward. Vance slams his gavel, the sound sharp but weak. "Order," he barks, but his eyes stay on Marcus, searching for a way out. Marcus stands taller, his presence filling the room. "The charge against me is baseless," he says. "I complied, provided my license, and followed protocol. The officers used excessive force, falsified their report, and disabled their body cams. I have a recording of the stop." The gallery murmurs, a tide of shock and anger. Holt's notes slip from her hands, scattering across the floor. Carver's eyes dart to the exit, but there's no escape now. Marcus's recorder, still in his pocket, holds every word from the highway. Boone's taunts, Carver's laughter, the scrape of gravel as they forced him down. It's not just evidence, it's a reckoning. I request the charges be dropped. Marcus continues, his voice unwavering. And I recommend Officers Boone and Carver be placed on administrative leave effective immediately pending federal inquiry. Vance's hands tremble, his gavel. Forgotten. You're sure of this? He asks, almost pleading. Marcus nods, his eyes steady. I'm sure of the law. The room feels smaller now, the walls closing in on Boone and Carver. Boone's voice breaks desperate. We were just doing our job. Marcus turns his gaze cold but not cruel. Your job isn't to break people, he says. It's to protect them. You chose wrong. Ruth stands, her voice cutting through the chaos. Your Honor, I can verify the badge with DC if needed. Vance waves her off, his face ashen. Do it, he says, but his voice lacks conviction. The gallery buzzes, locals whispering, some nodding, others staring at Boone and Carver like they're seeing them for the first time. The young man in the back clenches his fists, his breath quick. He's not alone anymore. Marcus's truth has cracked the room open, exposing not just one night, but years of buried complaints, of stops without cause, of voices silenced. Wetumpka's courthouse, once a stage for routine injustice, is now a battleground for accountability. Boone slumps against the wall, his bravado gone. Carver's eyes glisten, not with tears, but with panic. They know what's coming. Its suspension investigation may be worse. Marcus doesn't revel in it. His fight isn't for revenge, but for the names in his case files, the ones who didn't have a badge to pull out. He thinks of Clara, the janitor, her quiet hymn in the station. Of the young man in the gallery whose story might finally be heard. The recorder hums a silent promise kept. Vance clears his throat, his voice barely above a whisper. Charges dismissed, he says, then louder. Officers, you're on leave until further notice. The gavel falls a hollow echo. Marcus steps back, his shadow softening in the sunlight, slicing through the blinds. The room exhales, but the tension lingers, a reminder that this isn't the end. Boone and Carver shuffle toward the exit, their boots heavy, their futures uncertain. The gallery erupts in murmurs, some angry, some relieved. Ruth meets Marcus's eyes, a small nod passing between them, a shared understanding of what this moment means. Marcus's hand brushes his pocket, the badge still warm. He's not done, not with Wetumpka, not with the system that let this happen. But for now, he's turned the room upside down, and that's enough. The Wetumpka courthouse empties slowly, its wooden benches creaking, as locals spill into the humid Alabama evening. Marcus Tate steps outside, the air heavy with the scent of magnolias and river water. At 52, his face carries the quiet weight of a man who's turned a room inside out without raising his voice. His worn suit, creased from the long night, feels lighter now, as if the badge in his pocket has shed some of its burden. The town square across the street buzzes with life shopkeepers, sweeping sidewalks, kids laughing near a fountain. But Marcus's victory casts a long shadow, one that Wetumpka can't ignore. His recorder, still humming in his coat, holds the truth of the highway stop, a silent testament to the justice he's set in motion. Inside the courthouse, the air still crackles with the aftershock of Marcus's revelation. Officers Travis Boone and Dale Carver are gone, their badges surrendered, their futures tangled in federal inquiries. The department reels its patterns of abuse, unlawful stops missing, body cam footage, buried complaints now exposed under Marcus's unyielding gaze. Judge Harold Vance, his authority diminished, sits alone in his chambers, the dismissed case file open before him. Ruth, the clerk, files her notes with a steady hand, her eyes bright with something like hope. She thinks of her brother, his story buried years ago, and whispers a prayer that this time change might stick. Marcus walks toward the square, his steps deliberate, his shadow long against the cobblestones. A young man from the gallery, Jamal, barely 20, approaches, hesitantly. Mr. Tate, he says, voice low. What you did in there, I've been stopped too. Never thought anyone would listen. Marcus meets his eyes, seeing the weight of a familiar story. They'll listen now, he says, his voice calm but firm. Keep speaking. Jamal nods, his shoulders straightening, a spark of courage kindled. Marcus's words aren't just for him, they're for Clara, the janitor, whose hymn carried him through the cell. For the mother stopped twice in a week, her toddler crying in the back seat. For every name in his case file silenced until today. Some truths linger, waiting to be unveiled. The town feels different now, its pulse quickened by whispers of what happened. At the diner on Main Street, locals lean over coffee mugs, debating in hushed tones. They drag that man for nothing, an older woman says, her voice sharp. Thought he was nobody. Her friend nods, stirring sugar into her cup. He's somebody, all right. FBI. Bet those officers are sweating now. Across town, a community center hums with an impromptu meeting. Parents and neighbors gathered, tired of teaching their kids how to survive a traffic stop. A woman named Felicia stands, her voice steady. We need answers, she says. Reopen those old complaints. Tate showed us what's possible. The room murmurs agreement, a tide of resolve rising. Sheriff Tom Hargrove Boone and Carver's boss sits in his office, the phone heavy in his hand. The FBI's compliance hold has shut down field operations, leaving only dispatch running. Hargrove's face lined with years of turning, a blind eye sags under the weight of what's coming. We didn't know who he was, he tells a deputy, but the words sound hollow. Marcus's recorder, now in federal hands, tells a different story. Boone's taunts, Carver's laughter, the thud of Marcus hitting the gravel. Hargrove knows the investigation won't stop at two officers. It's a mirror held to the department, to the town, to a system that let prejudice fester like rotten old wood. Marcus reaches his car, the gray Corolla parked under a street lamp. He pauses, hand on the door, and looks back at the square. A group of high school kids pass by, one in a blue hoodie, giving him a small nod. Not fear, but recognition. Marcus returns it, a quiet acknowledgement. He thinks of his daughter, Lena, her voice sharp with worry. Dad, why do you carry it all? He hasn't called her yet, but he will, to tell her this wasn't about him. It was about the ones who don't have a badge, who face the same stop, the same cell, the same courtroom, with no recorder to prove their truth. His fight is for them, always has been. The sun dips below the rooftops, painting the sky in hues of gold and amber. Marcus slides into the driver's seat, the case files in his briefcase, a roadmap to the next town, the next department, the next fight. His phone buzzes, his contact at the DOJ, confirming the Wetumpka investigation is expanding. You stirred the hive, the voice says. Marcus's lips press into a thin line, not a smile but a resolve. Good, he says, and hangs up. The recorder, now silent, rests in his pocket, a symbol of the truths he carries, the ones he'll keep unveiling. In the days that follow, Wetumpka changes slowly, unevenly. The community center meeting grows into a town hall packed with voices demanding accountability. Felicia's call to reopen complaints gains traction. Old files dusted off under federal oversight. Sheriff Hargrove announces new protocols, mandatory body cam audits, community reporting systems, his voice strained but resolute. Some officers resist, their whispers bitter, but others, like a young deputy named Sarah, step forward, tired of the old ways. I signed up to protect, she tells a colleague, not to hide. The town square, once a backdrop for routine days, becomes a stage for something new, a community learning to see itself, to listen. Marcus drives out of Wetumpka at dusk, the Coosa River glinting in his rearview. He doesn't need headlines or applause. His victory is quieter, deeper etched in the nod from Jamal. The hymn from Clara, the files now open on Hargrove's desk. In a nation built on second chances, justice isn't loud. It's the slow, steady work of holding mirrors to the broken places, of standing tall when the world expects you to kneel. Marcus's dignity, his refusal to bend, has cracked Wetumpka open, and the light pouring through isn't his alone. It's for every soul who's been underestimated, every story dismissed, every truth waiting to be heard. He turns the radio on, gospel filling the car, and drives into the night, ready for the next truth to unveil.